I was recently sitting in a meeting with my client working on a new apartment design that we're about to execute. We've been through all the processes of client briefing, decision making, and planning around the existing apartment and what we wanted to achieve in the new design. My next step was to provide him with potential layouts of what we are able to achieve or what we could achieve within the space. When the time came to present my final layouts, or the plan, view and elevation as we've discussed previously, I had actually drawn up a 3D model or a 3D view of the space, but decided to keep that for last and just show him our 2D floor plans. We sat in our meeting for hours as I explained to him what my vision was. My mind was quite made up on which layout I felt worked best for the space, but my client was still unsure. I decided to show him the 3D model or 3D drawing at this point. He was sold. Do you know why? Most of our clients and most of your clients that you're going to come across within this industry are not able to visualize in 3D. A designer is generally gifted with being able to visualize spaces in 3D of what they may become. This is why it is so important to be able to communicate in three-dimensional form, not only via your computers, but by hand as well. In today's lesson 5, we're looking at everything in perspective. I'm sure you know what perspective means and to be able to see in perspective, but we are going to apply this to the interior design world. We'll cover what perspective is and how it relates to us as interior designers. We will also touch on measurements and scale in this section, as you'll start using scale to create your very own perspective drawings. I know, a little bit of a scary topic, but something we are going to master, so don't worry. Let's take a look at our key learning objectives for this lesson. Firstly, we will understand what perspective means in interior design. You will grasp the concept of scale and measurement and proportion. You'll get a really good understanding of the types of perspective that we have and we will be using. And we will look at the application of perspective drawings. So here we will be drawing our very own perspective drawings. This is an incredibly exciting lesson, but a challenging lesson, so get ready for the ride. As usual, we'll need a couple of things for the lesson, and you will always start off with our trusty sketchbook. So grab your sketchbook. We'll need a couple of pens and pencils, whatever you've got handy, your scale ruler or just a standard ruler, a copy of the plan drawing that we drew up in lesson 2, a large surface area, and my favorite, a nice little space where you can feel very relaxed and calm and get some peace and quiet. Let's get your creative juices flowing. We begin today's lesson by looking at the word perspective and what perspective means to you. So have a think about it, put your answers into your Morpheus text box. Let me know if you've got an idea of what perspective means. In the meantime, I'm going to give you a quick definition. Perspective can be defined as the art of representing a three-dimensional object on a two-dimensional surface so that it gives us the right impression of the height, the width, the depth, and the position in relation to each other. So these statements and this concept of perspective is pertinent to interior design and the way we see and communicate. So why do you think we create these 3D drawings? Why do you think we create and use perspective? As interior designers, we use perspective to showcase and communicate our ideas, thoughts, and projects in the same way that we would have used our floor plans and elevations. When we talk about using perspective, it means that we are creating three-dimensional drawings to showcase 2D or our flat drawings in a 3D format. So this is generally used when we're sitting with clients or wanting to present phenomenal presentational drawings. It's useful to the client, as we know, they often find it very difficult to visualize in a 3D format. Interior designers, or us, we would use perspective in a way to represent again our 3D spaces on our flat surface. It helps the designer share features with the client in a way that people actually perceive space. So it gives us a realistic idea of what the space may look like and how we can function in it at a later stage. Did you know the idea of perspective was something that had to be discovered during the Italian Renaissance by Renaissance artists? Yes, it was discovered. So we can give thanks to the Renaissance period and these artists, as they were not only masters of art and sculpture, but also proficient in mathematics, and this is where the law of perception and perspective was discovered. So if you're wanting to look up a couple of these artists, you can search Brunelleschi and Alberti. They introduced the use of perspective, and in doing so, forever changed the development of art and the way we perceive perspective. With perspective comes scale. The scale of our drawings need to be accurate in order to accurately portray information to our client. This could be of the proposed space or even of our existing space. Let's look at the steps to create accurate scale and proportion within our drawings. Firstly, our step 1 is measuring your space. So this is literally taking your tape measure, taking dimensions and gathering as much dimensional information as you can. Step 2 is to take your realistic measurements and scale them to the drawing that you're working from. When we're using our computer-aided software, scale and dimensioning our drawings is much easier, as the software has been pre-programmed and has all the information to scale sitting within the software or program. When we're sketching, we're totally on our own. But hold on a second, are we really on our own? There is a tool that can assist us to scale our realistic dimensions to the page that we're working from. So can any of you give me an idea of what this tool is called? I'm sure most of you have come across it, but do you know the name? It's called the scale ruler. So what is a scale ruler? A scale ruler is a 3-sided ruler that we use to convert actual dimensions to a scale drawing or scaled drawings to accurate dimensions without having to use maths or a calculator to work out ratios of changing existing dimensions to fit the scale of our page. I know a bit of a mouthful, but an important fact to realize or to understand. So let's look at how to read the scale ruler. On each side of the ruler, on the far left, before the 0 mark, you have your ratio. So as you can see on the screen, we've got a 1.20. So we're looking at a 1 in ratio to 20. If you're reading a drawing, the appropriate scale will be written on your plans. So if you're drafting a plan, choose an appropriate scale. This will depend on the size of your drawing compared to the actual dimensions described. So at the bottom of the page, if you see a 1:20 or a 1:10, so 1:10, 1:20, you will know which part of the scale ruler side to be using. This will also help you accurately read your drawings. So let's put this to the test by looking at an example. You will notice that there are ratio marks at the far end of your scale ruler. You may see 1:10, 1:20, 1:1, or even 1:5. The first value is indicative of the value in reality, and the second value indicates what ratio your drawing has been drawn at. The first value is reality, and the second is the ratio. The ratio will need to reflect on your drawing. So if we are looking at a value of 1:20, this simply means that the scale is 1/20th of the size that you are working with in reality. So for example, 20 centimeters in reality is represented by 1 centimeter on your drawing. Do you understand? So 20 centimeters in reality is indicated by 1 centimeter on your drawing. Let's look at an example. So Fred is our client and he has a space of 2 meters wide by 2 meters long. You will start by rotating your scale ruler to the ratio 1:20 and draw a line from the 0 mark to the 2000 millimeter mark. You have now drawn a 2-meter line. This is an incredibly challenging concept to understand, so I would recommend practicing this exercise with your floor plans from your lesson 2. You can recreate them in the correct proportional value as on your page as to reality. I would suggest using your 1:20 or your 1:10 scale. Practice and practice and practice until you get it right. You can post your challenge practices up onto your social media platforms, listing any challenging points that you may be having. Good luck, guys, and I'd love to see how far you get with this. Now we know that perspective can be used to take our realities to paper and communicate on an accurate scale. Perspective then becomes so much more intriguing and a beautiful subject full of surprising secrets and tools for communication during your project development phases. It is this knowledge that will let you work wonders on paper, allowing you to create really impressive views for your clients and for yourself. Perspective is the most basic and fundamental knowledge you need to learn for sketching. It'll help you deliver your projects expertly. There are a few types of perspective drawings or 3D drawings that we need to look at in detail. Let's take a look and see what they are. We are going to look at 3 of the most common perspective or 3D drawings below. Firstly, we have our axonometric drawing or our 3D drawing. Second, we have our one-point perspective, which is also known as our aerial perspective or frontal perspective. And secondly, you're looking at your 2D perspective, also known as angular perspective or oblique view. Perspectives can have 3, 4, 5, and even 6 vanishing points. So which ones are of the greatest value to interior designers? At this point, I think our most important perspective and maybe most easiest to achieve is our 1 and 2 point perspective, as these allow us to accurately convey the interior of a space. These will also allow you to fill in detail that may have not been seen before or may not be realized in your 2D formats. So there are some really amazing perspective artists out there, and 2 of them I'd encourage you to take a deeper look at are, firstly, we start with Joe and Max. These are artists who have traveled the globe creating their artwork in a range of spaces and formats for different clients. And then our second artist, who is actually a Dutch artist, is Maurits C. Escher. And then we look at our Dutch artist. His work is absolutely phenomenal and more of a historic artist that we look at, and probably one worth studying in a little bit more depth. In Escher's art, we can see the inclusion of mathematical law and perspective. We can also see this in Joe and Max's artwork, but again, more modern and more vibrant. So definitely artists to look out for. And if you have some extra time in your day or want to do a little bit of extra reading, definitely give these guys a look. Let's begin with our axonometric 3D drawing and take a look at this drawing in more depth. This is most likely one of the most simpler methods in creating your 3D presentational drawings. This drawing can be drawn directly from your 2D plan view, given that you have the correct scale and dimension, obviously. Let's jump into some of the characteristics of our axonometric or axo drawings. Firstly, these drawings are always 3D or 3-dimensional drawings. They require heights and dimensions and scale, obviously, and therefore provide us with accurate height, scale, and dimension. They are generally drawn in object form or from objects rather than of an entire space. So axos generally are of furniture pieces or form and objects within the space. They do not have vanishing points or VP. We'll get to the explanation of vanishing points in a couple slides. Don't worry, guys, hang in there. These drawings, because they are drawn of objects and form, are typically used in the construction industry. We also have 3 types of axonometric drawings. First is the isometric, the dimetric, and the trimetric drawing. Have a look at this example of your axonometric drawing on your screen. Can you list some of the key elements that you can see within these drawings or key characteristics? Think about the list that we've just covered and see if you can apply that to this drawing. In the meantime, can you see why this is such a fun and quick drawing to draw up? It shows a lot of detail and it's not really as technical as our other drawings. So some of the key aspects or key characteristics that I can pick up is that it is a 3D drawing. We get an idea of the scale of the object, the height, the width, and the dimension. So the scale and proportion of the height versus the proportion of the width. We can see that this is a drawing of an object, so we know that our axonometric drawing is generally drawing of an object. and it doesn't have a vanishing point, or there is no clear vanishing point. Our next perspective view is called our two-point perspective. It is also known as the oblique view. The reason it's been given the name two-point perspective is because it has two vanishing points, or two perspective points, sitting on the horizon line. This perspective drawing is drawn as if the corner wall is facing the front of your drawing. Let's take a look at some of our key characteristics for our two-point perspective drawings. First, it's also a three-dimensional drawing. This is generally a view of a room or interior space, but can also be drawn as an external space, as you can see in the example. As we know, these drawings have two vanishing points. They depict accents or dominant features within the space. So, for example, in a bedroom or a study, you may want to show an accent wall or an accent piece of furniture. And this perspective is ideal for very small spaces or small details that you're wanting to show. I'm sure most of you are wondering what your vanishing point and horizon line is. Let's take a look. So your vanishing point is the place where something moves so far away from your view that it just vanishes. The point on the horizon line where all perspective lines meet. So as you can see in your example, I've got two little dots on either side of the drawing. Those are your vanishing points, where the drawing vanishes, or where the final line of sight is. Then we have horizon line. This represents the viewer's eye level, or where the sky meets the water or land. When inside, it could be where the wall meets the floor, or where your line of sight sits. So as you can see in the image, our horizon line is joining the two vanishing points. So let's take this as an example and recap our horizon line and our vanishing points. So our horizon line is the view of sight, or our view within a space or on the drawing. As a designer, you would put in your horizon line. And our vanishing points are the point where the view vanishes, the point where all the horizon lines intersect or meet. So can you visualize this in this drawing? You can see slight little angular lines heading towards our vanishing points. Let's take a look at this example on our screen of another two-point perspective drawing, and let's see if we can list some of the characteristics learnt above. We can see that it's a three-dimensional drawing. It's an exterior view, but we are able to see quite a lot of detail in this view. I can see two vanishing points. Are you guys able to see them? It depicts accents or dominant features. So in this case, our building is the dominant feature, and accent points or detailing would be the surrounds around the building, or the detailing around the windows and the detailing around each level. Can you see our viewpoints? And this is where our horizon line is. Can you see how the corners of the building are dripping and angling themselves towards the vanishing points? Now that we've covered our two-point perspective drawings and our axonometric drawings, it's time to look at one of my personal favorite drawings, the one-point perspective drawing. And I'm sure by now most of you can tell me why the name has been given to this drawing. Yes, because it only has one vanishing point. Therefore, it has one point of perspective. The one-point perspective, or frontal view as it's also known, is a type of perspective that, as we know, only has one vanishing point, and it is also located on the horizon line. In these perspective drawings, or these drawing types, we generally see three walls. We see the frontal wall and the two side walls. So in this example, can you see how we see the frontal wall, which is our back wall that we're looking directly at, and then each side wall is projecting off that back wall. Let's take a look at an example and list some of the key elements to our one-point perspective. There are three-dimensional drawings, or 3D drawings. They can be drawings of a room or a space. They have one vanishing point, and it sits on our horizon line. There are great drawings to depict views of public spaces. They are great drawings as they maximize the view of a space. So we get as much information out of that space and we're able to see as much as the view as possible. And the vanishing point in these drawings can be shifted along the horizon line. So our vanishing point can be shifted along the horizon line. Changing the position of our vanishing point in relation to the center of the pictured plane, you can place it anywhere on your horizon line. So it can be shifted slightly towards the left, slightly towards the right, depending on what view of the space you're wanting to show. Let's take a look at an example of our perspective drawing, our one-point perspective. Can you see where I've indicated our horizon line? It's the view in which we see the space, the view of our eye level. Can you see where I've located our vanishing point? It's right on the back wall, and in this case, it's centered to our horizon line. Let's take an example. Have a look at this example of our one-point perspective drawing on our screen and see if you can list some of the key elements that we learned about one-point perspective, the key characteristics or key elements. Pop your answers into your Morpheus text box. So I can see that we have a three-dimensional drawing. This is clearly a 3D view of a space. I can see that we have a vanishing point on our horizon line. I can see this is a view of a public space. And it's clear that we're getting the maximum view out of this drawing or out of this visual. So we're able to see three walls, we're able to see furniture placement, height, volume of the space, and you're almost able to see how one would be able to feel and interact with inside the space. Right, so we've reached probably the most exciting part of this lesson. We are going to learn step by step how to draw up our very own one-point perspective drawings. Before we get started, let's look at why perspective drawings are great and why they are good for the client, what it does for you as an interior designer. Firstly, they are incredibly impressive presentational drawings. So it really shows the client that you are able to visualize the space, and it shows the vision that you're trying to portray in quite an impressive piece of art. Essentially, these drawings could be artworks or pieces of art. It also shows the client that you've got a good grasp of the space. They can be applied to any drawing type or any drawing space. They give a really great realistic view of the space that you're working with or trying to portray. They incorporate all the principles and elements that you are using within your project within the space. So we get a great idea of scale and proportion. We're really linking with balance, harmony. We can see how balance has been incorporated into the space. We can see how harmony and unity has been used within the space. And probably one of my favorite parts, we get to see how pattern, texture, and color has been used in the space, and we're able to show this to our client. They are also great foundational drawings to starting any kind of perspective drawing. So once you've mastered your 1 point, you can then progress to your 2 point, 3 point, and 4 point perspective drawings. Just a little teaser before we carry on as to what you can expect from your lesson 6. So lesson 6 is all about style and where style has originated from. We also touch on your style versus the client's style. A very exciting lesson and one not to be missed, so stay tuned. Let's jump back to our 1 point perspective drawings. We start off with the scenario, Claire's bathroom. We've just proposed our layout plans to Claire and our elevations of her new house renovation. She, however, has some questions about her bathroom as she's not sure what the final proposal looks like. What are we going to show her and how are we going to propose showing this to her? Can any of you guys give me an idea? We could use our innovation drawings, but we need to show at least 3 walls, or at least 3 sides of the space. What do you think the best tool here is? Obviously, our 1 point perspective drawings, we're able to show color, finishes, proportion, the samples that we may be using within the space. Let's take a look at our brief. Our brief is to show Claire her new guest bathroom and position of the toilet, basin, and mirror. Let's look at the information Claire has given us. Our ceiling height is at 2,400 millimeters or 2.4 meters. We've got a door height of 2,100 millimeters or 2.1 meters. And we've got our width of our bathroom at 1.5 millimeters. This width you probably could pull from your floor plan that we drew up in lesson 2. Otherwise, you can use these dimensions provided. Now that we've obtained our brief from our client Claire, let's look at some of the steps that we need for drawing up our one-point perspective. Step 1. Set up your room. Choose the space that you're wanting to draw in perspective view. Put it at the bottom of your blank page and you can begin drawing. In our case, we're going to be using our plan from lesson 2, Claire's plan, and we'll be drawing up her guest bathroom. Step 2, create your baselines, so your floor and your ceiling lines. Step 3, we will set up our grid. Step 4, we will add our viewpoint. Step 5, we will be adding all of our detail. And lastly, step 6, we will neaten up and shade. Let's look at step 1. We will set up our drawing. As you can see, we're using Claire's bathroom from our lesson 2 brief. Step 2 is to create the ground and ceiling lines. Grab your ruler and draw 2 horizontal lines in the center of your page. They need to be 2,400 millimeters apart or 2.4 meters apart, which is essentially your height. You can use whatever scale you want on your scale ruler or even on your normal ruler. In this case, I'm using 1:20, the ratio 1:20. So as you can see, I first drew my bottom line and then I drew my ceiling line, and this is essentially creating a box within the page. So let's jump onto step 3, and this is creating our grid. So we have a little box on the center of our page or within our page, and we're going to use this box to create the grid. The grid is going to allow us to accurately scale the drawing, and each grid line will represent a measurement. For the purpose of neatness, we are going to keep our grid as simple as possible so that we don't have all lines going all over the place. So for future reference, your grid can be as simple or as complicated as you want. This is just a sample that I like to work from. Let's begin by dividing your block into 4 equal horizontal segments. If we do our maths, it's 2,400 divided by 4, which gives us 600 millimeters each. So you can see each blocky or each block, I've allocated 600. You can then do the same with 3 equal segments vertically. So 500 segments each at a scale of 1:20. This is your width. So guys, please don't panic if you're struggling with scale. You can use your ruler to determine a scale that suits you, or if you are really struggling, just use your eye. Look at the image that I've given here and use your eye to scale this image to your page. So we move on to step 4, where we add our viewpoint. As you can see, I've marked a little X in the middle of my horizon line and indicated VP, which is our viewpoint. I'm now going to project the corners of my box out into the blank space. So I take my ruler, I line it up with the central point, and I project the lines of each corner out into the blank space. I do the same with the edges of my grid within the box. Now we start with step 5, where we add our detail. Your one-point perspective is going to start looking very realistic at this point. When I speak about adding detail, I'm referring to adding furniture fixtures, light fittings, mirrors, toilets, etc. So you guys can get a little bit creative at this point. It doesn't need to look exactly like this. Maybe you want to add a different type of toilet or a round basin or maybe a couple of mirror types. Get creative, step out of your box. Next we jump on to step 6, which is neatening up and adding shadow to our drawing or shade. You can start by neatening up your drawing with your pens and adding shadow and texture. This is not something that we've covered yet, and we'll be doing this towards the end of your module, but if you do feel confident or you have added shadow before, please go ahead. As you can see, I've added shadow in areas that I feel would be darker in this room. So areas that would attract shadow. So as you can see under my toilet, I've added a little bit of a darker pencil, and this is to indicate shadow thrown by the toilet. Right guys, you've now mastered your drawing in your one-point perspective, your very own one-point perspective drawings. Remember to carry on building up on your elevation, your plan, and your one-point perspective drawings in your sketchbooks or on pieces of paper. And remember to photograph them and post them up on Instagram. I've seen a lot of you guys have been posting your challenges and the works that you've been creating, and honestly guys, they are looking amazing. You are progressing so well. Keep it up. It's that time of the lesson, challenge time. Today's challenge, I'm sure you guys guessed, is to create your very own one-point perspective views from your plan drawings. You can follow the brief and the scenario that I provided at the beginning with your checklist, or you're welcome to draw up your very own bathroom if you've created your own plan of your own space from lesson 2.